Welcome everybody. This video is going to be about economics, money, and value. But first, subscribe, like, comment, and share if you dare. Double dog dare, actually. With peace and love, we appreciate you. And we're here to teach you some free astrology, but also, philosophy. Piscean ponders on philosophy. So let's talk about our prolegomenon on the necessity of a new grammar. The crisis of our age is not economic, it is not political, it is grammatical. We speak of economies as machines, systems of levers, pulleys, and calibrated adjustments. We speak of governments as structures, foundations, pillars, edifices awaiting repair or demolition. These metaphors have failed us. Machines do not grow, they break. Structures do not adapt, they crumble. What follows is an attempt to forge a new grammar, and this manual treats economics and governance not as mechanical systems, but as living organisms, entities that breathe, metabolize, adapt, and eventually die. It draws upon ancient organic philosophy, systems theory, and what might be called biological political economy to propose a radical reimagining of how human collectives organize themselves. Okay? Now the thesis is simple. An economy is the metabolic process of a society. A government is its nervous system, meaning neither can be understood in isolation and neither can be engineered from without. They must be cultivated from within each other. So our first principles: the organism against the machine. The mechanical worldview, born in the 17th century, treated the universe as a clockwork. God was a clockmaker. Natural laws were the gears. This metaphor extended to human affairs. The state was a leviathan, an artificial man constructed by social contract. The economy was a mechanism for allocating scarce resources. All right. Now, this worldview, it achieved much. It also blinded us to fundamental truths. A machine has 4 properties that distinguish it from an organism. The first is externality of design. Machines are designed by an intelligence outside themselves. Organisms are self-organizing. Reversibility is a second. Machines can be disassembled and reassembled without loss of essential function, so organisms cannot. Thirdly, non-adaptation. Machines do not learn from their environment unless programmed to do so. Organisms adapt continuously. And fourth, finitude of purpose. Machines exist to serve ends external to themselves. Organisms exist to serve their own continued existence. Now, when we treat economies as machines, we attempt to design them from outside. We imagine we can disassemble and reassemble them at will. We ignore their adaptive capacity. We ask them to serve purposes, growth, efficiency, shareholder value that may be antithetical to their continued existence. The result is predictable. The machine breaks. Financial crises, political instability, ecological collapse. These are not bugs in the mechanical system. They are the inevitable consequences of treating living processes as dead things. Alright, chapter 2, we're going to talk about the tripartite soul of the polis. Plato's Republic offers a starting point, though we must go beyond it. Plato divided the soul, and by analogy the state, into 3 parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. The just state, like the just individual, maintains harmony among these parts, with reason ruling, spirit enforcing, and appetite obeying. The schema remains valuable but insufficient. It is static. It describes structure, but not a process. A living organism possesses not 3 parts, but 3 functions. Metabolism, the conversion of external resources into internal structure and energy. This is the economic function. Homeostasis, the maintenance of internal equilibrium despite external fluctuation. This is the regulatory function. Cognition, the processing of information from the environment and the coordination of response. This is the governing function. These functions are not hierarchical in the Platonic sense. They are interdependent. Metabolism without homeostasis produces cancerous growth. Homeostasis without cognition produces rigid stupidity. Cognition without metabolism produces paralysis. The art of statecraft is the art of balancing these functions, not once, but continuously in response to changing conditions. All right, chapter 3 is the law of requisite variety. Cybernetics, the science of control and communication in animals and machines, offers a principle of profound importance for political economy. W. Ross Ashby's law of requisite variety states, for a system to successfully adapt to its environment, the variety of its internal responses must match the variety of environmental disturbances. In simpler terms, only complexity can also absorb complexity. A government that attempts to govern a complex society with simple rules will fail. The society will find ways around the rules, or the rules will crush the society's adaptive capacity. A centralized planned economy attempts to reduce economic variety to a single plan. It inevitably collapses under the weight of the variety it cannot absorb. Conversely, an economy with high internal variety, diverse firms, diverse industries, diverse modes of production and exchange can absorb environmental shocks that would rather shatter a more homogeneous system. Variety is not inefficiency, variety is resilience. This principle has profound implications for governance. The role of government is not to reduce variety, but to maintain the conditions under which variety can flourish, while ensuring that this variety does not destroy the system's coherence. Part 2, we're going to talk about the economy as metabolism. Chapter 4 is energy, matter, and information. So, an organism metabolizes. It takes in energy and matter from its environment, transforms them into structure and activity, and excretes waste. An economy does the same. Energy in the economic organism takes many forms: fossil fuels, solar radiation, human labor, animal power. Every economic act requires energy input. The history of economic growth is largely the history of accessing cheaper and more concentrated energy sources. All right. So matter is the stuff of economic structure: buildings, machines, roads, products, bodies. Matter cycles through the economy, extracted from the earth, transformed, used, and eventually returned to the earth as waste. Information is the pattern that organizes energy and matter. A pile of bricks is not a house. The blueprint makes it a house. Iron ore is not a plow. The knowledge of smelting and shaping makes it a plow. Information is what turns raw potential into actual structure. The metabolic view reveals a truth obscured by conventional economics. An economy cannot grow indefinitely on a finite planet. Organisms grow until they reach maturity, then maintain dynamic equilibrium. Cancer is what happens when growth continues beyond maturity. The question is not whether economies should stop growing. The question is, what does economic maturity look like? What is the healthy, steady state of a human collective? All right, chapter 5. Circulation and the heart of the economy. In a living organism, blood circulates, carrying nutrients to cells and waste away from them. The heart pumps, arteries and veins channel capillaries to exchange. In an economy, money is the blood. It circulates, carrying value from place to place, enabling exchange, signaling where resources are needed and where they are abundant. When circulation stops, the tissue dies. When money stops moving, when hoarding replaces exchange, when credit freezes, when payments are delayed, economic tissue begins to die. Businesses fail, jobs disappear, communities atrophy. financial system is the heart of the economic organism, but hearts can malfunction. They can pump too fast, inflation too slow, recession, or unevenly, inequality. They can develop blockages, monopolies, corruption that starve some parts of the body while engorging others. The art of monetary policy is the art of maintaining healthy circulation, not by commanding every capillary, but by regulating the pressure and rhythm of the whole. Chapter 6 is the immune system and economic defense. So organisms have immune systems, complex networks of cells and chemicals that identify and neutralize threats. Economies have immune systems too. Antitrust law identifies monopolistic concentrations that threaten the health of competition. Consumer protection identifies fraud and deception that poison exchange. Financial regulation identifies speculative bubbles and predatory lending that can trigger cardiac arrest. But immune systems can malfunction. They can attack the body itself, autoimmune disorder. They can overreact to minor threats, allergy. They can fail to recognize genuine danger, immunodeficiency. The history of economic regulation is the history of immune system evolution. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was a response to the monopolistic trusts that threatened to strangle the American economy. The Securities Exchange Act of 1934 was a response to the speculative fever that caused the 1929 crash. The Dodd-Frank Act of 2010 was a response to the financial crises of 2008. Each new regulation is an attempt to strengthen the economic immune system against newly evolved threats, but each regulation also risks autoimmune side effects, stifling healthy activity in the attempt to suppress pathology. The challenge is not to eliminate all threats, that is impossible. The challenge is to maintain an immune system that can learn, adapt, and distinguish friend from foe. Part 3 is government as a nervous system. Chapter 7, sensation, integration, response. A nervous system performs 3 functions: sensation, detecting conditions in the environment and within the organism; integration, processing sensory information and determining appropriate responses; response, coordinating muscles, glands, and organs to execute the response. A government performs the same functions for the social organism. Sensation is intelligence gathering, census data, economic statistics, scientific research, public opinion polling, news media, whistleblower reports. A government that cannot sense accurately cannot govern effectively. It is flying blind. Integration is deliberation, legislative debate, judicial reasoning, executive decision-making, bureaucratic analysis. Sensory input must be processed, weighed, and transformed into policy. This requires institutional structures that can handle complexity without collapsing into paralysis or tyranny. Response is action, legislation, regulation, enforcement, spending, diplomacy, war. Response must be proportional to the situation and coordinated across the many organs of the state. When any of these functions fails, the organism suffers. Sensory failure produces surprise, Pearl Harbor, 9/11. Integration failure produces gridlock, budget crises, government shutdowns. Response failure produces impotence, inadequate pandemic response, slow disaster relief. Chapter 8 is the autonomic and the voluntary. The nervous system has 2 branches, autonomic and voluntary. The autonomic system handles functions below consciousness, the heartbeat, digestion, breathing. The voluntary system handles conscious choice, such as movement, speech, deliberate action. Government has analogous branches. The autonomic state handles functions that must proceed without constant democratic deliberation: currency issuance, mail delivery, air traffic control, disease surveillance. These functions require expertise, consistency, and insulation from political whim. They are the background processes that keep the social organism alive. The voluntary state handles functions that require conscious choice. Declarations of war, major legislation, constitutional amendments, judicial appointments. These functions require democratic legitimation, public debate, and political accountability. They are the foreground choices that shape the organism's direction. The art of constitutional design is the art of drawing the line between autonomic and voluntary, and creating mechanisms for moving functions from one category to the other as circumstances change. A state with too much autonomic function becomes a technocracy, unresponsive to popular will. A state with too much voluntary function becomes a mob, incapable of consistent action. Health lies in balance. And that's literally what Libra is. Scales. Alright, chapter 9 is the limbic system and collective emotion. The brain's limbic system processes emotions. Emotion is not the enemy of reason, it is the foundation upon which reason builds. Without emotion, we cannot make decisions. Patients with damage to emotional centers become incapable of choosing, endlessly weighing options without ever committing. Collectives have emotions too: fear, hope, anger, trust. These circulate through the social body, shaping what is possible and what is not. Fear contracts the social organism. It produces hoarding, suspicion, withdrawal. Fear-based governance emphasizes security, surveillance, exclusion. Hope expands the social organism. It produces investment, connection. Hope-based governance emphasizes opportunity, inclusion, possibility. Anger mobilizes the social organism. It can be directed constructively against injustice or destructively against scapegoats. Anger-based governance is volatile, prone to purges and crackdowns. Trust lubricates the social organism. It enables delegation, credit, cooperation. Trust-based governance is efficient, requiring less surveillance and enforcement. So, a wise government attends to collective emotion not as manipulation but as diagnosis. High fear suggests unmet security needs. Low trust suggests institutional failure. Chronic anger suggests unresolved grievances. Emotions are data about the health of the social body. Part 4, let's talk about the living polis. And chapter 10 is development, not growth. Organisms develop. They do not simply grow larger. They differentiate, complexify, mature. A child is not a small adult. A seedling is not a small tree. Development involves qualitative change, not merely quantitative increase. Economies and governments must develop, not merely grow. Economic development means increasing complexity of function, not merely increasing output. A developed economy produces a wider range of goods and services, supports more diverse livelihoods, adapts more readily to change. It may or may not have higher GDP than an undeveloped economy. GDP measures size, not development. Political development means increasing capacity for collective action, not merely increasing state size. A developed state can sense more accurately, integrate more intelligently, respond more effectively. It may or may not have more employees or a larger budget than an undeveloped state. These measures mass, not capacity. The confusion of growth with development has produced pathological forms. Economies that grow by consuming their own ecological base, states that expand by crushing their own citizens' initiative. These are cancers, not healthy development. We're looking at you, Minneapolis, Minnesota. in St. Paul. Minnesota's just gone to shit, to be honest with you. Chapter 11, regeneration and healing. Organisms regenerate, wounds heal, broken bones knit, lost tissue within limits regrows. Economies and governments must regenerate too. Economic regeneration means the capacity to recover from shocks, plant closings, natural disasters, technological disruption. Regenerative economies have diverse industrial bases, skilled workforces capable of retraining, social safety nets that prevent cascading failure. Political regeneration means the capacity to recover from institutional trauma, corruption scandals, leadership failures, constitutional crises. Regenerative polities have robust civil societies, independent judiciaries, free presses, competitive elections, institutions that can renew themselves without revolution. The opposite of regeneration is necrosis, tissue death that spreads if not contained. Economic necrosis occurs when a region's major industry dies and nothing replaces it. Appalachian coal country, Rust Belt manufacturing cities. Political necrosis occurs when institutions lose all legitimacy and cannot be reformed. Failed states collapse regimes. Preventing necrosis requires early intervention, but intervention of the right kind. External can create dependency, not regeneration. True healing must come from within, though it may be supported from without. So chapter 12 is death and succession. All organisms die, so do economies, so do governments. Now the question is not whether death will come, but how. Sudden, violent death, slow wasting death, or succession. The passing of life from one form to another as the organism's matter and energy are taken up by new life. Rome did not die, it became something else. The Western Empire fragmented into successor states that carried forward Roman law, language, religion. The Eastern Empire continued for another millennium as Byzantium. Roman economic patterns persisted long after Roman political forms vanished. The American Republic will die someday, so will the global capitalist economy. The question is whether their death will be a necrotic collapse or a generative succession, whether what comes after will carry forward what was valuable or whether all will be lost. Succession requires preparation, seeds that can survive the parent's death, institutions that can be adapted rather than destroyed, knowledge preserved in forms that outlast their original containers. A society that denies its own mortality cannot prepare for succession. A society that accepts mortality can ensure that something of itself lives on. Part 5 is Principles for Practice. Alright everybody, welcome back. You don't know this, but this video has been merged because I had a weird ass night. But I'm back and we're going to talk about Principles for Practice, Chapter 13, Subsidiarity and Scale. So, the principle of this right here, subsidiarity, it's ancient and Catholic social teaching, but applicable universally. And it holds that decisions should be made at the lowest competent level. Meaning that, you know that argument with like free will versus fate? We all, to some extent, have that. And we all, to some extent, have this. So, what can be decided locally should not be decided nationally, though. And this is what we're seeing with, transgenderism, and, hormones, surgery. It's just all this crazy Pluto and Aquarius deciding for people on a national, global level, when we had Joe Biden in office at least. What can be decided individually should not be decided collectively. And it's not to say I support Trump either. It's just, it's disturbing. I'm not even going to go into it. This is not merely a political principle. It is a biological principle. Organisms are composed of cells, tissues, organs, systems. Each level has autonomy within its sphere, yet each is subordinate to the whole. The cell does not decide when the organism should flee. The brain decides that, but the brain does not decide when the cell should divide. The cell decides that within its limits. Alright? Hopefully my videos are making more sense, but this is just my philosophy, so I don't know who hears me. So scale mismatches produce pathology. When national governments decide local matters, they produce uniformity that ignores local variation. The one-size-fits-all disaster. When local bodies decide national matters, they produce parochialism that ignores systemic effects, the NIMBY catastrophe. The art of governance is the art of matching decision level to decision type. This requires constant attention, constant adjustment as conditions change and capacities evolve. Chapter 14 is redundancy and resilience. Engineers efficiency, eliminate redundancy, streamline processes, minimize waste. Nature builds redundancy, multiple organs, multiple pathways, multiple backups. The engineer system is efficient until it fails. Then it fails catastrophically. Nature system is inefficient until it is needed, then it survives. Economies and governments need redundancy. Economic redundancy means multiple suppliers for critical goods, multiple industries in a region, multiple skills in a workforce. It means accepting some inefficiency in exchange for resilience. The COVID-19 pandemic revealed the cost of efficient global supply chains. When one factory in China closed, the world ran out of masks and ventilators. Political redundancy means multiple centers of power, multiple sources of information, multiple pathways for redress. It means separation of powers, federalism, civil society, free press. These are inefficient. They slow decision making, create conflict, duplicate effort. They also prevent catastrophic failure. When one branch is captured, others remain. When one source of information fails, others persist. Now I know that's a weird way to leave this video off, but I think that's enough about the economy. So, with peace and love, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.